Your dog can smell the exact moment your cortisol changes, not when you start crying, not when you say something is wrong. Before any of that, before you've consciously registered that anything is off, your dog already knows. Scientists proved it. In 2022, researchers at Queen's University Belfast collected sweat samples from people before and after a stress test, then presented those samples to dogs. No visual cues, no voice, just smell. The dogs identified the stress samples with over 90% accuracy from a stranger's sweat across a room, and in 2024, Dr. Zoe Parr-Cortez at the University of Bristol found that when dogs smell human stress, even from someone they've never met, it changes their emotional state. They become more cautious, more alert. Something in them reads human stress as a signal that the world just got more dangerous. Not trained, not conditioned, just wired. Chimpanzees share 98.7% of our DNA. They use tools, solve puzzles, mourn their dead. They cannot do this. Wolves, the direct ancestor of every dog alive today, cannot do this either, so something happened. Between the wolf that howled outside human camps in the Ice Age and the dog sitting next to you right now, something changed that has never happened between two species anywhere in the history of life on this planet. Nobody planned it. And that's exactly what makes it strange. To understand how that happened, how a predator became the only animal on Earth that can read your emotions before you can, you need to go back 15,000 years. Not to a city, not to a farm, to the edge of a campfire in Ice Age Eurasia, where a small group of humans was trying not to die. Life was brutal. Most hunts failed. One bad winter could wipe out an entire group. And at the edge of every camp, just beyond the firelight, where the dark started, wolves waited. Apex predators, jaws strong enough to crush bone, eyes that worked perfectly in the dark when human eyes were useless. Every howl meant the same thing. Something is out there. And yet humans are messy eaters. Even starving hunter-gatherers left behind bones, scraps, half-eaten carcasses. To a wolf, a human camp wasn't a threat. It was a moving pile of free calories. So some wolves crept closer. The aggressive ones got speared. The terrified ones stayed back and got nothing. But a few just slightly less afraid, just slightly more curious, those ones ate. Those ones survived. Those ones had pups. And those pups were born slightly less afraid than their parents. Nobody noticed. Nobody was watching. It just happened, quietly, over hundreds of generations. At the edge of the fire? Here is what makes dogs completely unlike every other domesticated animal in history. Cattle were captured and confined. Horses were broken and forced to carry humans. Goats were fenced in. Every single one of them had domestication done to them by force, by confinement, by human decision across many generations. Nobody did that to wolves. Nobody captured them. Nobody ran a breeding program. The wolves that became dogs did it themselves by choosing, generation after generation, to stay close to the one species on Earth dangerous enough to kill them. And in doing so, they triggered something nobody predicted. In 1959, Soviet geneticist Dmitry Belyaev started an experiment in Novosibirsk, Siberia. He took silver foxes, wild, aggressive, terrified of humans, and did one single thing. Every generation, he selected only the tamest 10% to breed. No training, no tricks, just less fear. Within a few generations, the foxes wagged their tails, sought eye contact, whined for attention. But then, something nobody predicted. Their ears went floppy, their tails curled, their snouts shortened, physical changes appearing automatically just because someone selected for one behavior. Belyaev didn't breed them to look different. He only selected for tameness. And the bodies followed on their own. This is what happened to wolves. Except nobody was running the experiment. For thousands of years, at the edge of human campfires, evolution was quietly doing what Belyaev did in Siberia without Belyaev. And the result of all that silent change? We found it. Buried in the ground. 14,000 years old. The oldest confirmed dog burial was found in 1914 by quarry workers in Oberkassel, Germany. A grave 14,000 years old. Inside, a man, a woman, and a dog. Buried together, deliberately, with carved objects made from bone and antler. Recent analysis by Luc Janssens at Leiden University revealed the dog had been gravely ill canine distemper for at least 6 weeks before it died, too sick to hunt, too sick to guard. Completely useless as a working animal, Ice Age humans, fighting every day just to survive, spent food and time nursing a sick puppy that served no practical purpose. And when it died, they buried it like family. That is not utility. That is 14,000 years ago and something that looks very much like love. Then, in 2002, Brian Hare at Duke University published research in Science that made the field stop. He had watched chimpanzees fail to follow a simple pointing finger, food hidden in one of two containers. Experimenter points at the correct one. Chimpanzee stares at the finger. Not the container, the finger. Our closest relative, 98.7% of our DNA, cannot understand what a pointing gesture means. Hare tested his own dog. The dog followed the point immediately. First try, every try. Even newborn puppies do it without any training. Wolves cannot. Only dogs. The ability is genetic, written into their DNA during thousands of years of learning to read us. Then in 2015, Takefumi Kikusui at Azabu University, Japan, published this in Science. When dogs and humans make eye contact, oxytocin rises by up to 300% in both species simultaneously. Oxytocin is the hormone a mother's brain releases when she looks at her newborn. The deepest bonding chemistry humans are capable of. When your dog looks into your eyes, that same chemistry activates. In both of you. At the same time. Kikusui tested hand-raised wolves next. Wolves that had lived with humans their entire lives. The response didn't activate. That bond evolved specifically in dogs after domestication, a biological love response shared across two different species that had never existed anywhere in nature before. And in 2019, researchers found synchronized heartbeats. Some dog-human pairs, during stressful moments, had cardiac rhythms that literally mirrored each other, not trained, just connected at a level that goes deeper than behavior. But the deepest claim of all didn't come from a lab. It came from a fossil site in Europe. Anthropologist Pat Shipman at Penn State University spent years analyzing wolf dog remains from sites across Europe dated to around 36,000 years ago. Her conclusion: when modern humans arrived in Europe 40,000 years ago, they had wolf dogs. Neanderthals didn't, and within 10,000 years, Neanderthals were gone. If Shipman is right, dogs didn't just help humans survive. Dogs help determine which species got to exist at all. So put all of that together: the cortisol detection, the pointing finger, the oxytocin loop, the synchronized heartbeat, the grave, the Neanderthals. And then ask yourself, what kind of animal actually is this? We talk about dogs like they're a very successful domestication project. An animal humans shaped to fit into our lives. That's not what happened. Humans shaped cattle, humans shaped horses. Every animal we call domesticated was changed by force. By human decision, by confinement across hundreds of generations. Nobody changed dogs. Dogs changed themselves by choosing over 15,000 years to move toward us instead of away. And in doing so, they became something that has never existed anywhere else in the history of life on this planet. Not to serve you, not to obey you, just to know you. In that 14,000-year-old grave in Oberkassel, a sick puppy that couldn't do anything useful was buried like a member of the family, by people who had almost nothing, who could not afford to waste food or time on anything that didn't help them survive. They did it anyway. Tonight your dog will look at you, that steady gaze you've never quite been able to explain. Now you know what's happening in that moment. And maybe for the first time you'll understand what's looking back. Which part of this hit you hardest? The cortisol study? The grave? The fact that wolves, the animal your dog came from, cannot do any of this? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to know how cats made the same journey living beside humans just as long but refused to change a single thing about themselves along the way, that video is right here. Same road. Completely different animal,